This story happened to me and my friends when we were traveling around the country. I lived in a small town at the time, and we went to see the vastness of our homeland by car. There were 5 of us, and here we got to one monastery, about which we heard many legends. Someone said that this place is cursed. Someone believed that this monastery is a holy place. About myself, I can say that I did not know who to believe, but now I know for sure that this place has something mystical. So, we arrived there just in the evening. There was a service that day. It was a great holiday. There were many parishioners. And next to the monastery, there was a pond. And to my great surprise, there were white swans swimming there. They were so wonderful, like in a fairy tale, and so snow white. We went to the monastery, and one of my friends stayed in the car. He did not want to go with us. Half an hour later, he ran into the monastery like a scalded man, and all shaking, began to mutter some nonsense about devils in the car. We all laughed at him. We thought he was playing a joke on us. He told us that while he was sitting there, a strange man in rags, but with a very young face, knocked on his window, asked him for a light, and they got to talking. And then he told my friend that this place was considered unusual, that a boy and a girl had once drowned in this pond from unhappy love, and supposedly, since then, they had been swimming there in the form of swans. He also told me that they did not give peace to the local parishioners of the monastery. Then he left, and our friend felt that someone was rocking the car, and not just barely noticeable, but exactly rocking and shaking, as if trying to turn it over. And of course, to make sure that he was talking nonsense, we went to sit in the car with him. Nothing happened for a long time. We all laughed at him, but for nothing. After a while, we felt as if someone pushed the car, a little, then stronger. We were in shock, just sat there, not moving from fear. Everything subsided, then the car started to rock, as if someone was going to tip it over. My friend started the car, and we drove away as fast as we could. We were never there again, but we remembered this incident for the rest of our lives. We told everyone, no one believed it. What it was is still a mystery to me.
It must have been 1998. That's when I lost my boyfriend. He died of an overdose. It was really hard for me. To get my mind off it, I got a job, but I didn't get along well with my immediate supervisor. He was quite young. He constantly picked on me and ridiculed me for my mistakes, some of which were not made by me. Everyone saw it, but no one intervened. Didn't want to get involved. It was Sunday. I thought with longing that tomorrow I had to go to work again. It was impossible to find another job. There was none. My salary was delayed. And of course, I thought that my boss would cling to me again. With such thoughts, I went to bed. In the morning, I dreamt of my dead young man. He was so bright, so calm. And he said to me, "Don't worry, go to work. Everything will be fine. No one's gonna hurt you." And he sort of kissed me. I woke up. I don't know if it was a dream or reality. I went to work, and they tell me that my boss died of throat swelling this morning for unknown reasons. I wasn't even surprised at the time. It was like I knew. I still don't understand to this day what it was. Coincidence or not, and I never dreamt about my young man again.
My best friend had a sister. Her name was Yulia. Yulia was a year younger than us, so she finished 9 grades and went to medical school. A year later, she met a guy. He was about 10 years older than her. She fell in love with him hard, as only her mother did not persuade her. She loved him, and that was it. Yulka got pregnant, and she and Sasha got married. Their daughter was born, so Yulia became a mum at 17. At first, Yulia wanted to quit studying, but her mother insisted on getting a profession. Sasha worked somewhere, I don't remember. And so, Yulka continued to study, and her mum took care of her granddaughter. The girl was called Sveta. And so, about 4 months passed, as one day, Yulia did not come home. Her mother called all her friends, Her husband called all his acquaintances, as in the water vanished. They filed a search, but neither in a month nor in a year Yulka was not found. 5 years passed. Svetochka grew up. Sasha left her to live with her mother-in-law, and himself rented a flat and lived separately, but with his daughter communicated every day. Once Sasha and his friends went swimming on the lake, and it so happened that he drowned. Sasha was buried, and on the 9th day, the mother has a dream, as if Sasha is standing over her daughter's cot and looking at her. The mother asks, "What are you doing, Sasha?" And he answers, "I'm looking at Svetka. I missed her so much." "Sasha, isn't Yulia there with you?" "With me, but she's naked. She can't go out. You could give her a dress." Mother gave him Yulia's favorite dress. The next day, her mother decided to look at the dress, but didn't find it. A few months later, a gang was detained. They kidnapped young girls, drugged them, and sold them to wealthy men for a night. One victim managed to escape. She immediately went to the police, and they were detained on a hot trail. These scumbags immediately began to testify. On their account was 10 ruined lives. Yulka was among them. And strangely enough, Yulka was left with one skeleton and a dress that looked like new, the very dress that her mother had given to Sasha in her dream. The skull was sent for examination, where they confirmed that it was Yulia and buried her in the local cemetery next to Sasha. Let them sleep peacefully, and let Sveta grow up healthy and happy.
I'm already quite an adult, and I don't believe in all sorts of mystical stories. But sometimes things happen that make you think. I had a grandmother, an ordinary, unremarkable old lady. We lived with her and my mom. When I went to the 1st grade, my grandmother had a stroke. After that, she began to be very ill, gradually to become blind and to go mad, as it seemed to us then with Mom. But it didn't turn out quite like that. About 7 years passed, and Grandma stopped getting out of bed completely, became completely deaf and blind. And one day, she called Mom over to her and said, "Why are such little children walking around here alone?" pointing her finger clearly to the corner of the room. We thought she was delirious and paid no attention. Then, about a week later, my completely paralyzed and blind relative started to get out of bed and communicate with those children whom only she could see. After the children, relatives who had not been alive for a long time began to come to her, and my mother and I began to be very frightened by this. The last straw, when we began to realize that something was wrong, was a conversation with my grandmother's own sister. We did not communicate with her often, but she was definitely still alive. After a few days of communication, there was a phone call. It was the sister's son who called and invited us to say goodbye to her, as she had been lying dead for 2 days. But grandmother's condition was also deteriorating. She became aggressive, constantly shouting that she was being pulled into the pit by people she didn't know. Apparently, trying to escape from them, she single-handedly moved an old Soviet cupboard full of goodies to the window and broke an old oak bed, although the old woman could not even eat without help. Leaving the door to her room open was absolutely impossible. Opposite, in the corridor, there was a vestibule with a mirror. Somehow locating it, the blind grandmother simply panicked, cowering in a corner out of fear, screaming that there were so many people there and that they wanted something from her. In the end, we called the priest, but strangely enough, the restless old woman, who could not be calmed down neither by the police nor by the medics, slept like an angel. After the priest left, she slept for maybe 2 days. And then it happened again. And now she's been dead for 2 years. But my grandmother reminded me of herself. On Epiphany, she dreamed to me old, but absolutely healthy, in her favorite dressing gown. She was on the playground, but all alone, and began to persuade me to take her away from there, because she is very bored. She is all alone, and no one comes to her. After complaining about this, she suggested an option to get her out. With precision, she gave me instructions on what items to put at the crossroads and what to say. Then she would return. But there was also a warning. If I did what she asked me to do, someone in the family would die. I woke up in fear, but after a day, I forgot about it. I didn't know what I would dream about. On the third day, my grandmother came again in her favorite dressing gown to disturb my sleep. She asked me if I had thought of summoning her from a place she didn't want. Having received a firm refusal, I haven't dreamt of her again. No one knows what this strange story is, with which my mother and I lived for more than 8 years, and the doctors spread their hands, but it was terrible.
The story of an elderly woman. Let's call her Anastasia Nikolaevna. Now she is already a city dweller, but back then, in the 80s, she still lived in a small village. She lived well. She was friendly with her neighbor Anna Gavrilovna. She was a good, kind, and hard-working woman. She managed to keep the household and work hard, and even help her neighbors. Anna Gavrilovna had one misfortune. One, but terrible, her daughter Lisa was drinking. Even in her youth, Lizaveta got in touch with a bad company. She began to drink, smoke. Do not come home at night. Her mother tried to talk her out of it, but to no avail. Body life more and more dragged the girl, and now, in her 27 years, she looked all 40, almost never a day sober, and in every possible way pulled from Anna Gavrilovna money for alcohol. And yet, without giving up faith in a miracle, her mother never gave up on Lisa. Constantly pulled her out of drunken companies and even swept her away from the police, where she was caught several times for petty theft and hooliganism. That's how they lived. Lizaveta did what she wanted, and Anna Gavrilovna all hoped for a magical cure for her wayward daughter. But it did not happen. In the 28th year of life, Lisa died. Either her heart failed, or she was poisoned by some rubbish. The medics and the police did not even bother to find out. They said that another drunkard had died, and thank God. The rest of the villagers, to be honest, thought about the same thing, and only the mother inconsolably mourned Lizaveta. Sometime after the death of the girl, Anastasia Nikolaevna began to notice that with her neighbor and friend, something wrong was happening. The woman seemed to have lost her mind. She walked around the village and told everyone she met that Lazochka came to her at night. She came and asked for forgiveness for her earthly life, for drinking, for partying, for her mother's frayed nerves. The villagers, of course, Anna Gavrilovna, did not believe. They thought that she had gone mad because of the loss of her beloved daughter, and only Anastasia Nikolaevna thought about it. Very accurately, in all the colors and details, her friend described Lisa's visit. And one night, what happened was this. Anastasia Nikolaevna was already in her 10th dream when she heard a loud knock at her door. Jumping up to the bed, she went to the sound. At the door she hesitated. Who is it to her at this hour? "Who's there?" shouted a woman. Aunt Nastya heard from the yard. "It's me. Lisa. Open up, please. Mom is bad." The news that the neighbor was in trouble made Anastasia Nikolaevna immediately grab the keys. A second more, and the door was opened, but behind it was empty. It was only at this moment that the woman shuddered and almost fainted from horror. Who had she just spoken to while standing in front of the door? Lisa? But Lisa was dead? Barefoot, in a nightgown, she rushed home to Anna Gavrilovna. For some reason, the front door was open. The friend herself was lying on the kitchen floor and did not move. From the neighbors who, fortunately, had a telephone, called an ambulance. Fortunately, the ambulance arrived quickly. Anna Gavrilovna was saved. It turned out that she had had a heart attack. Soon she left the hospital. Surprisingly quickly and confidently was on the mend. From an old woman tormented by worries, again turned into a blossoming woman. Her daughter, according to her, never came to her again.